So you are new to the class one. So good morning to all. In the previous class, we have started a discussion on salient features of Indian Constitution. That is, we have completed the historical background. We have discussed how Constitution came to enforcement, and we started a discussion on salient features of Indian Constitution, and as a part of this discussion, we even started a discussion on, so we have completed what is written Constitution, and we are in the element of parliamentary future, that is the future on parliamentary system of government. So we all know that is we have adopted this parliamentary system of government from Britain, right, which is also called as cabinet form of government. It is also called as cabinet form of government. Though we have adopted the parliamentary system of government from Britain, but Indian parliamentary system is different from British parliamentary system. That is, mainly if you take Indian parliamentary system is restricted, that is Indian parliament is restricted by our own constitution, whereas if you take British parliament, so British parliament is an unrestricted one, that is British parliament enjoys, right, independence. It is sovereign and independent, whereas Indian constitution, it is neither independent nor sovereign, because, all right, we have a written constitution, and it is this written constitution. So every organ of the state, they derive their power from this written constitution, right? So it is this constitutions. It is this written constitutions. So wherever there are written constitutions, so it is this constitutions which exercises control on all the organs of the state, because all the organs of the state, they derive their power from constitution. That is, constitution is a source of power of all the organs of the state. So whenever we talk about the organs of the state, you take any nation, right, every nation has three organs, that is legislature, executive and judiciary. So we call them as three organs of the state. So all powers and authority of the state, they are separated between legislature, executive and judiciary, and all these organs, they derive their power from constitution. So wherever there is written constitution, all the organs of the state, they derive their power from constitution. That is the reason why no organ enjoys independence, or no organ enjoys independence above the constitution. So constitution is a supreme organ, constitution is the supreme document. So every organ is restricted and limited by constitution. So is the case of Indian parliament. So ekkadaithe parliamentary systems untayo akkada, right, constitution is supreme document. ఏ ఆర్గన్ అయినా సరే, అది లెజిస్లేచర్ కావచ్చు, ఎగ్జిక్యూటివ్ కావచ్చు, జ్యుడిషియరీ కావచ్చు, ప్రతి ఆర్గన్, రైట్, it is restricted by constitution. Alright, if you go to British system, in Britain there is no written constitution. That is the reason why in Britain parliament is a source of constitution and parliament enjoys sovereignty and independence. Right, in Britain parliament enjoys sovereignty and independence. So that is the difference between Indian parliamentary system and British parliamentary system. So in the previous class I have given this difference between Indian parliamentary system and British parliamentary system. So once again I have just rewinded what we have discussed in the previous class. Alright. So Britain lo parliament anadi sovereign independent. India lo parliament is not sovereign, it is not independent. Parliament is restricted. Alright. So this is what we have discussed. Alright, and again and again we will talk about this topic because there is an element of constituent powers. There is an element of constituent powers. Alright. So when we will discuss, when we will go through the topic of amendments to constitution, when we will discuss this topic of amendments to constitution, then again we'll bring a difference between Indian parliamentary system and British parliamentary system. Right? That is when we will discuss this article 368. There we will talk about the constituent powers of Indian parliament and British parliament. So don't get confused. Constituent powers means it is power of parliament to amend the constitution. Alright. So simply you can remember it as right, amending powers of constitution. It is about amending powers of constitution. So we will discuss this topic again. Once again we will bring about the difference between Indian parliamentary system and British parliamentary system when we go through this topic. So as of now, remember that there is a difference between Indian parliamentary system and British parliamentary system. Indian parliament system is restricted and limited, whereas British parliament is unrestricted and unlimited. Right? So British parliament enjoys sovereignty. Right? So this is what one difference, and this is what we have discussed. Alright. So if you take the features of parliamentary system of government, we see existence of nominal and real executive. In a parliamentary system of government, right, we see existence of nominal and real executive. Right. Another important element is collective responsibility and individual responsibility. So even we have discussed these points in the previous class, right? So collective responsibility is regarded as bedrock principle of parliamentary system of government. Collective responsibility is regarded as bedrock principle of parliamentary system of government. So it is a bedrock principle of parliamentary system of government. It is also called as cornerstone of parliamentary system of government. Punadi rayi lantidi. Ante parliamentary system of government lo collective responsibility anadi oka punadi rayi lantidi. Right? So any violation to collective responsibility is a ground for removing the government. The governments can be removed, right, whenever there is a violation of principle of collective responsibility. So when there is violation, so any violation to the principle of collective responsibility, is a ground for removing the government, right? It is a ground for removing the government. That is Governments are removed only by passing the no confidence motion. So without passing no confidence motion, governments cannot be removed. That means what? Collective violation of principle of collective responsibility. Violation of principle of collective responsibility is a ground for introducing no confidence motion. Right? Violation of principle of collective responsibility is a ground for introducing no confidence motion. Right? So the word no confidence motion, మన కాన్స్టిట్యూషన్లో నో కాన్ఫిడెన్స్ అన్న మోషన్, ద వర్డ్ ఆఫ్ నో కాన్ఫిడెన్స్ మోషన్ అంటే నో కాన్ఫిడెన్స్ మోషన్ అన్న పదము మన కాన్స్టిట్యూషన్లో మెన్షన్ చేసి లేదు. ఇట్ ఈస్ నాట్ మెన్షన్డ్ ఇన్ అవర్ కాన్స్టిట్యూషన్. The word no confidence motion is not mentioned in Indian constitution. So it is an implied meaning of collective responsibility. So it is a meaning that is derived from collective responsibility. So this is very, very important and very frequently asked in competitive exams like UPSC. UPSC lo kuda chaala saarlu adigina question idi. Alright. So once again I am repeating, the word no confidence motion is not mentioned in constitution. No confidence motion a padam మన కాన్స్టిట్యూషన్లో మెన్షన్ చేసి లేదు. సో ఇట్ ఈస్ అ వర్డ్ దట్ ఈస్ derived from collective responsibility which is mentioned in Article 75 of Indian Constitution. Remember, both the words collective responsibility and individual responsibility, both the words collective responsibility and individual responsibility, they are clearly mentioned in Article 75. సో కలెక్టివ్ రెస్పాన్సిబిలిటీ, ఇండివిజువల్ రెస్పాన్సిబిలిటీ అనే రెండు పదాలు మన కాన్స్టిట్యూషన్లో క్లియర్గా మెన్షన్ చేయబడ్డాయి. కానీ ద వర్డ్ నో కాన్ఫిడెన్స్ మోషన్ ఈజ్ నాట్ మెన్షన్. సో ఇట్ ఈస్ డిరైవ్డ్ ఫ్రమ్ ద వర్డ్ కలెక్టివ్ రెస్పాన్సిబిలిటీ. సో ఎనీ violation ఆఫ్ ప్రిన్సిపల్ ఆఫ్ కలెక్టివ్ రెస్పాన్సిబిలిటీ ఈజ్ అ గ్రౌండ్ ఫర్ రిమూవింగ్ ది గవర్నమెంట్ బై పాసింగ్ నో కాన్ఫిడెన్స్ మోషన్. Right? So that is the reason why no collective responsibility is regarded as bedrock principle of Indian Constitution. It is regarded as the cornerstone of Indian parliamentary system. So not only Indian parliamentary system, but to take any parliamentary system, ekkadaithe parliamentary vyavastha untundo akkada this word of collective responsibility is regarded as bedrock principle. Okay? So let me explain the meaning of collective responsibility. So now we have seen the significance of collective responsibility. So what is the importance of this word collective responsibility? Let me talk about what we call the meaning of collective responsibility. The meaning of collective responsibility. So if you take this meaning of collective responsibility, right, it is the responsibility of executive to the legislature. It is the responsibility of executive to the legislature. Right? It is the responsibility of executive to the legislature. So what do you mean by executive here? It is the government of the day. Right? Government of the day. And legislature, it is parliament. Right? That means what? It is the responsibility of government to the parliament. In other words, collective responsibility means answerability and accountability of government as a whole. It is answerability and accountability. It is answerability and accountability of government. To whom? To the parliament. Answerability and accountability of government to the parliament. Telugu cheppalante జవాబుదారితనము. గవర్నమెంట్ ఎవరికి జవాబుదారి? To whom the government is answerable and accountable. It is answerable and accountable to the parliament. So parliament in general and Lok Sabha in particular. సో యాజ్ లాంగ్ యాజ్ యు ఆర్ ఇన్ సివిల్స్ ఎగ్జామ్, మీరు సివిల్స్ ఎగ్జామ్ రాసేంత వరకు, సివిల్స్ కొట్టేంత వరకు ఈ ప్రతి పాయింట్ గుర్తుపెట్టుకోవాలి ఎగ్జామ్కి. రైట్, యూ షుడ్ రిమెంబర్ ఈచ్ అండ్ ఎవ్రీ వర్డ్, రైట్, ఫర్ ది ఎగ్జామ్. సో పార్లమెంట్ ఇన్ జనరల్ అండ్ Lok Sabha in particular, it is answerability and accountability of, right, government to the Lok Sabha. It is answerability and accountability of government to the Lok Sabha. That is the meaning of collective responsibility. So the government as a whole, that means every member of the government. That means what? Every member means whom? Who are the members of government? Ministers. It is ministers. Every minister, right, they should answer, they are accountable to the parliament for every decision taken by the government. గవర్నమెంట్ ఏ నిర్ణయం తీసుకున్నా అందరూ ఆ నిర్ణయానికి కట్టుబడి ఉండాల్సిందే. అందరూ ఆ నిర్ణయానికి జవాబుదారీ. ఎవరికి జవాబుదారీ? పార్లమెంట్కి జవాబుదారీ. దే ఆర్ ఆన్సరబుల్ అండ్ అకౌంటబుల్ టు ది Parliament for every decision taken, for every policy made, for every program made by the government. So I want to clarify one point. So most of the people are asking me to teach in Telugu. నేను తెలుగులో మాట్లాడగలను, రైట్. ద పాయింట్ హియర్ ఈజ్, రైట్, ఎగ్జాక్ట్గా టెక్నికల్ టర్మ్స్ నేను చెప్పలేను, ఎందుకంటే రైట్ ఫ్రమ్ ద బిగినింగ్ ఐఎమ్ ఫ్రమ్ దిస్ పర్టికులర్ ఇంగ్లీష్ బ్యాక్గ్రౌండ్. కాబట్టి నేను తెలుగులో ఆ పదాలు నాకు ఎగ్జాక్ట్గా రావు. బట్ ఐ విల్ ట్రై టు ఎక్స్ప్లెయిన్ ఈచ్ అండ్ ఎవ్రీథింగ్ ఇన్ తెలుగులో ఎక్స్ప్లెయిన్ చేయడానికి ట్రై చేస్తా. మ్యాక్సిమం నేను తెలుగు చెప్పడానికి ట్రై చేస్తా. బట్ ద ప్రాబ్లమ్ ఈజ్, నా తెలుగు లాంగ్వేజ్ కొంచెం మాస్ అనిపిస్తుంది ఎక్కువ, అందుకని నేను క్లాస్లో చెప్పలేకపోతున్నా. ద రీజన్ ఫర్ నాట్ యూజింగ్ మై తెలుగు లాంగ్వేజ్ ఈజ్, సో మై లాంగ్వేజ్ ఈజ్ నాట్ దట్ యాప్ట్ లాంగ్వేజ్ టు బి యూజ్డ్ ఇన్ ది క్లాస్. బట్ స్టిల్, రైట్, తెలుగులో చెప్పడానికి ట్రై చేస్తాను నేను. సో ప్రతి పాయింట్ని కూడా ఐ విల్ ఎక్స్ప్లెయిన్ ఇన్ తెలుగు ఆల్సో, రైట్. బట్ don't what you call think otherwise, and alright. So I hope that every candidate, right, understands me. So people are asking me to use both in English and Telugu, and there are people who want me to teach in Telugu, right. మీకు కంపల్సరీ పేపర్ ఉంటుంది తెలుసా? మీకు యూపీఎస్సీలో కంపల్సరీ పేపర్ ఉంటుంది. ఇన్ మై ఫస్ట్ మెయిన్స్ ఎగ్జామ్ ఐ క్వాలిఫైడ్ కంపల్సరీ పేపర్ బై ఓన్లీ 1 మార్క్. ఆ ఒక్క మార్క్ రాకపోయి ఉంటే నేను క్వాలిఫై అయ్యేవాడిని కాదు. అండ్ దెర్ ఆర్ మై ఫ్రెండ్స్ హూ డిస్క్వాలిఫైడ్ ఇన్ కంపల్సరీ పేపర్. బీటెక్ మెకానికల్ ఉస్మాన్ యూనివర్సిటీ, రైట్, 3 సార్లు మెయిన్స్ రాసిండు అబ్బాయి, 3 సార్లు డిస్క్వాలిఫై అయ్యాడు. డిస్క్వాలిఫై ఎక్కడంటే కంపల్సరీ పేపర్లోనే, రైట్. అంటే సో డోంట్ థింక్ దట్ ఇట్ ఈస్ వెరీ ఈజీ టు వాట్ యు కాల్ ఆన్సర్ కంపల్సరీ పేపర్. మనకు వీ మైట్ నో ద వర్డ్స్, కానీ when it comes to writing the answer, it will be difficult. There was a question, still I remember the question which was asked in UPSC, that was a question that came in my third mains exam 2007 when I was giving my third mains exam. There was a question asked in Telugu paper. It was a question about essay, రైట్. మారుతున్న ఆహార పద్ధతుల మీద ఎస్సే రాయాలి. ఇట్ ఈస్ ఫర్ 100 మార్క్స్. అవుట్ ఆఫ్ 300 మార్క్స్ ఇన్ కంపల్సరీ పేపర్, 100 మార్క్స్ ఈజ్ ఆన్ ఎస్సే. వీ షుడ్ రైట్ అట్లీస్ట్ 300 వర్డ్ ఎస్సే. మారుతున్న ఆహార పద్ధతులు, అది ఎస్సే రాయాలి. నౌ వాట్ ఈస్ ద రీజన్ ఫర్ దిస్ చేంజింగ్ ఫుడ్ హ్యాబిట్స్ ఇన్ ఇండియా? నౌ వన్ ఆఫ్ ద రీజన్ వాస్ because of globalization and because of interconnectivity between different countries. This impact is also seen on changing food habits. ఇప్పుడు నాకు ఆ పదం ఏంటిది? గ్లోబలైజేషన్ పదం తెలుగులో రాయాలి. Now what is the word that is exactly that denotes globalization? మీరు చెప్పండి, మీరు చెప్పేంత వరకు నేను చెప్పాను. వాట్ ఈస్ ద వర్డ్ దట్ ఈస్ యూస్ టు రెఫర్ గ్లోబలైజేషన్? నేను ఎగ్జామ్లా కొట్టుకున్నా, అసలు నాకు ఐ వాజ్ నాట్ గెటింగ్ దట్ వర్డ్. ఇంగ్లీష్లో రాయలేము, రాస్తే వాడు మార్క్స్ కట్ చేస్తాడు. తెలుగులోనే రాయాలి, రైట్. ఒక ఆల్మోస్ట్ ఆఫ్టర్ హ్యావింగ్ 5 to 7 minutes ఆఫ్ థాట్ ఐ గాట్ ది వర్డ్ ప్రపంచీకరణ. నాకు గుర్తుకొచ్చింది, వర్డ్ వచ్చింది. ఒక 5-10 నిమిషాల తర్వాత నాకు వర్డ్ గుర్తుకొచ్చింది, ప్రపంచీకరణ వర్డ్ గుర్తుకొచ్చింది. కానీ ఇప్పుడు రాయడం రావట్లేదు, నాకు రాయడం రావట్లేదు. ఆ టేబుల్ మీద రాస్తా పోయినా ఇంతకీ నా చేయి తిరగట్లేదు. మనం ఇంగ్లీష్ రాసి అలవాటు అయిపోయి సడన్గా తెలుగు రాయమంటే చాలా ఇబ్బంది. ఎప్పుడో 10th క్లాస్ రాసినాం మనం తెలుగు. ఆఫ్టర్ 10th వీ హ్యావ్ నెవర్ రోట్ తెలుగు ఎగ్జామ్. We are very good in writing English, but coming to writing Telugu, it is very difficult. Alright, so that was my problem with Telugu. Alright, Telugu మాట్లాడడం వేరు, ఎగ్జాక్ట్గా ఆన్సర్ చేయడం వేరు. బికాస్ ద పీపుల్ హూ ఆర్ కరెక్టింగ్ తెలుగు పేపర్స్, రైట్, దే విల్ చెక్ ఈచ్ అండ్ ఎవ్రీ గ్రామర్ ఇన్ ది తెలుగు. దట్ ఈస్, దేర్ షుడ్ నాట్ బి ఎనీ కైండ్ ఆఫ్ గ్రామటికల్ మిస్టేక్స్ ఇన్ రైటింగ్ తెలుగు. Alright, so I hope the students understands me. I'll try to explain the words in Telugu, but may not be the exact words. టెక్నికల్ వర్డ్స్ నేను యూజ్ చేయలేకపోవచ్చు. వీలైనంత వరకు నాకు వచ్చిన వర్డ్స్ని చెప్తా. కానీ కమింగ్ టు యూజింగ్ ఆఫ్ టెక్నికల్ లాంగ్వేజ్, ఇట్ మైట్ బి సంవట్ డిఫికల్ట్. రైట్, సే ఫర్ ఎగ్జాంపుల్ ఆన్సరబిలిటీ అండ్ అకౌంటబిలిటీ, తెలుగులో ఇట్ ఈస్ కాల్డ్ యాజ్ జవాబుదారీతనం. రైట్, సో the government as a whole, that is, for whatever decisions that government takes, for every decision, for every policy made, నిర్ణయం ఏ మినిస్ట్రీ తీసుకున్నా సరే, డెసిషన్స్ ఏ ఒక్క మినిస్ట్రీ తీసుకున్నా సరే, గవర్నమెంట్ మొత్తం దానికి బాధ్యులే. ప్రతి ఒక్క మినిస్టర్ బాధ్యులే. సే ఫర్ ఎగ్జాంపుల్ ఆ డెసిషన్ ఈస్ టేకన్ బై హోమ్ మినిస్ట్రీ అంటే మాకు సంబంధం లేదు, ఓన్లీ హోమ్ మినిస్టర్ సంబంధం చెప్పడానికి వీల్లేదు. డెసిషన్ హోమ్ మినిస్ట్రీ తీసుకున్నా సరే ప్రతి ఒక్కరూ ఆ డెసిషన్కి జవాబుదారియే. ప్రతి ఒక్క మినిస్టర్ దానికి జవాబు చేయాల్సిందే. రైట్, దేర్ వాజ్ when TRS party was in power in Telangana, I have seen one when there was a press conference on the issue of cancellation of Group 1 exam. So when a question was posed to one of the minister, right, the minister said that it is not my department, it is someone else who is responsible for that. The minister said that అది నాకు సంబంధించిన డిపార్ట్మెంట్ కాదు, అది నాకు సంబంధించిన శాఖ కాదు, రైట్, దానికి నాకు సంబంధం లేదు, ఈ క్వశ్చన్ నన్ను అడగదని చెప్పాడు. ఐ డోంట్ వాంట్ యూజ్ ద నేమ్ ఆఫ్ దట్ పర్సన్. ద మినిస్టర్ ఈజ్ వెరీ వెరీ పాపులర్, ఐ డోంట్ వాంట్ యూజ్ దట్ నేమ్. అలా చెప్పచ్చా? వాట్ డస్ ఆర్టికల్ 75 సేస్? ఆర్టికల్ 75 అండ్ ఆర్టికల్ 164 ఇన్ ది కాన్స్టిట్యూషన్. ఆర్టికల్ 164 టాక్స్ అబౌట్ కలెక్టివ్ రెస్పాన్సిబిలిటీ ఆఫ్ స్టేట్ గవర్నమెంట్. నిర్ణయం ఎవరు తీసుకున్నా సరే ప్రతి ఒక్కరు దానికి బాధ్యులే, ప్రతి ఒక్కరు దానికి ఆన్సరబులే. రైట్, సో that is what collective responsibility. So collective responsibility means it is the responsibility of the government as a whole to the parliament. It is the answerability and accountability of the government, every member of the government. To whom? To the Lok Sabha. Now why only to Lok Sabha? What is the reason for Lok Sabha? Alright, because Lok Sabha is the one which provides government, the majority party in Lok Sabha. ఏ పార్టీకి అయితే లోక్సభలో మెజారిటీ ఉంటుందో ఆ పార్టీ మాత్రమే గవర్నమెంట్ ఫామ్ చేస్తుంది. సింపుల్గా చెప్పాలంటే ఇట్ ఈస్ ద లోక్సభ విచ్ ప్రొవైడ్స్ ఫర్ గవర్నమెంట్. ద వన్ హూ ప్రొవైడ్స్ గవర్నమెంట్ ఆబ్వియస్లీ హ్యాస్ ద పవర్ టు రిమూవ్ ద గవర్నమెంట్. ఎవరైతే గవర్నమెంట్ని ప్రొవైడ్ చేస్తారో, రైట్, హ్యాస్ ద పవర్ టు రిమూవ్ ఇట్. అందుకనే లోక్సభ అలోస్ ఫార్మేషన్ ఆఫ్ గవర్నమెంట్ and Lok Sabha, right, removes the government. The power to remove government only lies with Lok Sabha. Right, how governments are removed? Governments are removed by passing no confidence motion. Now my question is, where these no confidence motions are introduced? Logically cheppandi, where these no confidence motions will be passed? Lok Sabha only. Endukante Lok Sabha has the power to remove government. That means what? No confidence motions are allowed only in Lok Sabha. Only Lok Sabha has the power to remove the government. Right? So that is the importance, that is the meaning of collective responsibility. So it is the collective responsibility of the government towards Lok Sabha. Right? It is the collective responsibility of the government to the Lok Sabha. Right? This is one point. Right? Second, okay. Right? So this is what about collective responsibility. And coming to individual responsibility, if you take this individual responsibility is towards right, every member of the government, that is every minister individually they are responsible to President of India. In case of union, right, individual responsibility is towards President, right, collective responsibility is towards Lok Sabha. బాగా గుర్తుపెట్టుకోండి. So to whom this collective responsibility is and to whom individual responsibilities. Collective responsibilities towards Lok Sabha, individual responsibilities towards President. This is in the case of union. So according to Article 75. Remember, individual responsibility and collective responsibility, they are mentioned in Article 75. Not only in Article 75 but also in Article 164. But also in Article 164. Alright. So Article 164 deals with the state executive. Alright. 75 is about union. Article 164 it is about state. So in states, collective responsibility is towards state legislative assembly. So collective responsibility is towards, right, legislative assembly. It is towards legislative assembly, right? Whereas if you take individual responsibility is towards governor, right? Individual responsibility is towards governor. So there it is president in case of union. Here it is governor in the case of state. There it is Lok Sabha in case of union. It is what we call legislative assembly in the case of states. Alright, baga gurtu pettukondi. Alright, so this is what the second element of parliamentary system of government. So once again I am repeating, we are talking about features of parliamentary system of government. So our discussion is on right, our discussion is on features of parliamentary system of government, right? So already we have talked about in the previous class, we have talked about nominal executive and real executive, and in today's class, all right, in today's class we are talking about other features, that is collective responsibility and individual responsibility. Am I clear to you on this point? All right. Next, moving on to another feature of parliamentary system of government, that is dual membership. Another feature is dual membership. So what is this dual membership means? So if you take this dual membership means it is common membership to both executive and legislature. All right. So very right, be careful while understanding this point. It means common membership. It means common membership to both executive and legislature. Common membership to both executive and legislature. That means what? Every member of government, every member of executive, they are also members of legislature. So without being a member of legislature, a person cannot stay in executive. Alright, ante government lo unde prati okkaru, ante prati okka minister, alright, they are also members of legislature. Ante entidi? Alright, so without having a membership in legislature, a person cannot stay in executive. Alright, say that is without getting elected, right, no member can stay in government, or no member can stay in executive. Remember another caution of the word. I normally use the polity language or the constitutional language. when we are writing answers in polity, right, when we are writing answers in UPSC, even our language is also very important. You can write this even in a general layman English language, but right, which won't give you marks. To get marks in UPSC, to get marks in UPSC, every subject has its own language, every subject has its own terminology. So you should learn that terminology, you should learn that language of the subject. ప్రతి సబ్జెక్టుకి తనకంటూ ఒక టెక్నాలజీ లాంగ్వేజ్ ఉంటుంది, ఆ లాంగ్వేజ్లోనే ఎగ్జామ్లో ఆన్సర్స్ రాయాలి. జనరల్ ఇంగ్లీష్ వేరు, రైట్, సబ్జెక్ట్ ఓరియంటెడ్ లాంగ్వేజ్ వేరు, రైట్. అందుకే నేను మీకు ప్రతి క్లాస్లో కూడా ఐ నార్మల్లీ యూజ్ దిస్ లాంగ్వేజ్ సో దట్ యూ కెన్ ఆల్సో గెట్ హ్యాబిచువేటెడ్. మీరు కూడా దానికి అలవాటు పడాలి, రైట్. అలా అలవాటు పడితేనే మీరు రేపు ఎగ్జామ్లో మంచి లాంగ్వేజ్ని ఆన్సర్ రాయగలరు. ఇఫ్ నాట్, ఇట్ ఈస్ నాట్ పాసిబుల్. సో without getting elected to legislature, no member can stay in executive. That is, without being a member of parliament, without being a member of parliament, a person cannot be appointed as a minister in the union government. Right? అర్థమవుతుందా? ఇది చాలా ఇంపార్టెంట్. అంటే యూనియన్ గవర్నమెంట్లో అపాయింట్ కావాలి అంటే, అంటే ఒక మినిస్టర్గా అపాయింట్ కావాలి అంటే ఖచ్చితంగా రైట్ పార్లమెంట్లో సభ్యత్వం ఉండాల్సిందే. పార్లమెంట్లో సభ్యత్వం లేకుండా, లెజిస్లేచర్లో సభ్యత్వం లేకుండా ఎగ్జిక్యూటివ్లో సభ్యత్వం పొందడానికి ఉండదు. దట్ ఈస్ ఇట్ ఈస్ నాట్ పాసిబుల్ టు హ్యావ్ మెంబర్షిప్ ఇన్ ఎగ్జిక్యూటివ్, రైట్. ఇంకోటి, రైట్, దట్ మీన్స్ దిస్ ఇస్ నార్మల్ థింగ్. దట్ ఈస్ ఫస్ట్ గెట్ ఎలెక్టెడ్ టు లెజిస్లేచర్, దెన్ గెట్ అపాయింటెడ్ టు పార్లమెంట్, రైట్. దిస్ ఇస్ వన్ థింగ్. దిర్ ఇస్ అనదర్ వే, రైట్. అ పర్సన్ కెన్ ఆల్సో బి అపాయింటెడ్ యాజ్ అ మెంబర్ ఆఫ్ గవర్నమెంట్ ఇంక్లూడింగ్ ప్రైమ్ మినిస్టర్. Even a non-elected member, very very important point, even a non-elected member, even a non-elected member can be appointed as a member of executive, right, including prime minister. A non-elected member can also be appointed as a member of executive, provided such a person, such an appointed person should be elected within a period of 6 months of such appointment, or 6 months from the date of entry into the office. So within a period of 6 months, the concerned individual should get appointed, should get elected. The appointed individual should get elected within a period of 6 months. That means whenever a non-elected individual is appointed as a member of government, రైట్, ఎవరైనా సరే, అది ప్రైమ్ మినిస్టర్ కావచ్చు, మినిస్టర్ కావచ్చు, ఎప్పుడైనా ఒక నాన్ ఎలెక్టెడ్ మెంబర్ని ప్రైమ్ మినిస్టర్ కానీ లేకపోతే వేరే మినిస్టర్ కానీ అపాయింట్ చేసినప్పుడు ఖచ్చితంగా ఏ రోజైతే దాన్ని ఎంట్రీ ఇంటూ ఆఫీస్, దాన్ని ఏమంటాం, ఆఫీస్ని అజ్యూమ్ చేస్తారో ఆ రోజు నుంచి 6 నెలల లోపట, విత్ ఇన్ అ పీరియడ్ ఆఫ్ 6 months, ది ఇండివిజువల్ షుడ్ గెట్ ఎలెక్టెడ్ టు పార్లమెంట్, either to Lok Sabha or to Rajya Sabha. The only condition is it is to the parliament, irrespective of the house, right. The appointed individual should get elected to either house of parliament within a period of 6 months, right. That means what? In our constitution there is a provision to appoint a non-elected member. There is a provision to appoint a non-elected member as what you call minister, but the condition is such a person should get elected to either house of parliament within a period of 6 months. So this is clearly mentioned in article 75. It is clearly mentioned in article 75, right. Chudandi, we are even talking about Indian parliamentary system. It is not just salient features, but also we are acquiring the basic information of Indian parliamentary system, right. So this is clearly mentioned in article 75. So who appoints prime minister and other ministers in India? Who appoints prime minister and other ministers in India? President of India. Good. So it is President of India who appoints prime minister and other ministers, all right. So do President of India has any choice in appointing the prime minister? ఎవరిని పడితే అంటే ప్రెసిడెంట్ తనకు నచ్చిన వ్యక్తిని ప్రైమ్ మినిస్టర్గా అపాయింట్ చేసుకోవచ్చా? దట్ ఈస్, డు ప్రెసిడెంట్ హ్యాస్ అ చాయిస్ ఆఫ్ సెలెక్టింగ్ హిజ్ ఓన్ ప్రైమ్ మినిస్టర్, ఆర్ ఈస్ దర్ ఎనీ కండిషన్ ఫర్ వాట్ కాల్ అపాయింటింగ్ ప్రైమ్ మినిస్టర్? ఇక్కడ క్వశ్చన్ ఏంటిదంటే, ప్రెసిడెంట్కి ఏమైనా చాయిస్ ఉందా? డు ప్రెసిడెంట్ హ్యాస్ ఎనీ చాయిస్ ఇన్ అపాయింటింగ్ ద ప్రైమ్ మినిస్టర్? అంటే సింపుల్గా చెప్పాలంటే, ప్రెసిడెంట్ తనకు నచ్చిన వ్యక్తిని ప్రైమ్ మినిస్టర్కి అపాయింట్ చేసుకోవచ్చా? నో. వాట్ ఈస్ ద కండిషన్? నో. ప్రెసిడెంట్ యూజ్ ఆఫ్ మెజారిటీ పార్టీ. ఇంకొక మెట్టు ఎక్కండి, ఇంకొక పాయింట్. మీరు చెప్పింది కరెక్టే, ఇంకొక పాయింట్ మిస్ అవుతుంది. మెజారిటీ పార్టీ, ద లీడర్ ఆఫ్ మెజారిటీ పార్టీ, అది ఇంపార్టెంట్ పాయింట్. అర్థమవుతుందా? ప్రెసిడెంట్ హ్యాస్ నో చాయిస్. ప్రెసిడెంట్ హ్యాస్ నో చాయిస్ ఇన్ చూసింగ్ ది ప్రైమ్ మినిస్టర్. ప్రెసిడెంట్ హ్యాస్ టు అపాయింట్. దెర్ ఇస్ అ కంపల్షన్ ఆన్ ప్రెసిడెంట్. There is a compulsion on president, right? President has to appoint only the leader of majority party. Only the leader of majority party should be appointed as prime minister. So no other choice is exercised by president. President has no other choice. All right? Think that no party has got majority. ఇప్పుడు ఎలక్షన్స్ అవుతున్నాయి కదా మనకి. సో టుడే we are right, India is going for elections. All right? So, and what I've seen in the news is, right, representatives from 75 countries have come to India to witness elections of India. All right? So that is, the entire world is watching Indian elections. Inta pedda nation, inta pedda democracy, right? Inta pedda country lo, inta diversity unna country lo elections ela jarugutayi. That is how the elections are being held. But the point here is, my question is, think that when there is no majority party, then what? In case of in case of that, whether president can use his choice. So normally the condition is, the leader of majority party is appointed as prime minister. All right? The leader of majority party is appointed as prime minister. In case when there is no majority party, think that, imagine that no party has got majority. ఏ పార్టీకి మెజారిటీ రాలేదు, అప్పుడు ఏంటి పరిస్థితి? అలాంటి కండిషన్స్లో ప్రెసిడెంట్ తన చాయిస్ని వాడుకోవచ్చా? తన సొంతంగా నిర్ణయం తీసుకోవచ్చా? చాయిస్ మీన్స్ ప్రెసిడెంట్ యాక్టింగ్ ఆన్ హిస్ ఓన్. వాట్ ఈజ్ యువర్ గెస్? గెస్, జస్ట్ అ గెస్. ఎస్ ఆర్ నో? అంటే ప్రెసిడెంట్ కెన్ యాక్ట్ ఆన్ హిస్ ఓన్? No. Right? So remember, in the previous class I was saying that president is always a nominal executive. President is always a nominal executive. That means president can never act on his own. Alright? President can never act on his own. Remember, every time president is always assisted by a prime minister, even when there is no majority party. That is, we call such a prime minister as caretaker prime minister. When there is no majority party, the person who acts as prime minister will be called as caretaker prime minister. That means president shall always act on the advice of prime minister. ఇంకా ప్రెసిడెంట్ చాయిస్ అది ప్రసక్తే లేదు. ఒకవేళ ఏ పార్టీకి మెజారిటీ రాలేదనుకోండి, ఆపద్ధర్మ గవర్నమెంట్ అంటుందని. తెలుగులో కేర్టేకర్ గవర్నమెంట్ మీన్స్ ఆపద్ధర్మ గవర్నమెంట్. అంతేనా? మేబీ కరెక్టే అనుకుంటాను నేను ఆ వర్డ్. Right? So ఆపద్ధర్మ గవర్నమెంట్. సో ఆపద్ధర్మ ప్రైమ్ మినిస్టర్. Right? So that prime minister will advise president. So in case when there is no majority party available, so president still has to act on the advice of prime minister. But right? So when there is no majority party, or when there is no party which comes forward to form the government, then president can dissolve the Lok Sabha and go for elections. President can dissolve the Lok Sabha. President has every power. President has every power to dissolve Lok Sabha. Dissolve Lok Sabha when no party has majority. When no party has majority, or when no party comes forward to form the government. ఏ పార్టీకి మెజారిటీ లేనప్పుడు, ఏ పార్టీ గవర్నమెంట్ ఫామ్ చేయడానికి ముందుకు రానప్పుడు, అలాంటి కండిషన్స్లో ప్రెసిడెంట్ ఏం చేయగలడు? వాట్ ప్రెసిడెంట్ కెన్ డూ ఇస్ హీ కెన్ సింప్లీ డిజాల్వ్ లోక్సభ అండ్ కాల్ ఫర్ ఎలక్షన్స్, మల్టిపుల్ ఎలక్షన్స్. ఇలా జరిగిందంటే ఇలా చాలాసార్లు జరిగింది. 4 సంవత్సరాలలో 3 ప్రైమ్ మినిస్టర్లు, రైట్, 3 సంవత్సరాలలో 3 ప్రైమ్ మినిస్టర్లు, విపి సింగ్, చంద్రశేఖర్, పివి నరసింహారావు. సంవత్సరానికి ప్రైమ్ మినిస్టర్ మారిపోయింది ఇండియాలో, రైట్. హెచ్డి దేవగౌడ, ఐకే గుజరాల్, ఏబి వాజ్పేయి, అటల్ బిహారీ వాజ్పేయి 1 month ప్రైమ్ మినిస్టర్. మళ్ళీ అగైన్ ఎలక్షన్స్ ఫర్ హెల్డ్, ఎందుకంటే నో పార్టీ హ్యాస్ గాట్ మెజారిటీ. సో when there is no majority party available, when there is no majority party available, right, the president has every power. President has every power to dissolve Lok Sabha and call for elections. So we started our discussion with the point on dual membership. That means what? Right, dual membership means, right, the members of executive are also members of legislature, one point, and non-elected member can also be appointed as executive, provided such a person should get elected to either house of parliament within a period of 6 months, right, and it is the president of India who appoints these members of government. That is, both the prime minister and all other ministers, they are appointed by president of India. So this is what we have discussed. So all these are again mentioned in article 75 of the constitution. So article 75 also talks about appointment and removal of ministers, including prime minister, right. Whereas if you take article 74, article 74 states that president shall act. Article 74 states that president shall act on the aid and advice of council of ministers headed by prime minister. అంటే షల్ యాక్ట్, ఖచ్చితంగా యాక్ట్ చేయాల్సిందే. ప్రైమ్ మినిస్టర్ ఎలా చెప్తే ప్రెసిడెంట్ అలా యాక్ట్ చేయాల్సిందే. సో ప్రెసిడెంట్ షల్ యాక్ట్ ఆన్ ది aid and advice of prime minister, or shall act on the aid and advice of council of ministers headed by prime minister. So మనకు ఎగ్జామ్లో రాసేటప్పుడు ఆ వర్డింగ్ చాలా ఇంపార్టెంట్, రైట్. సో దిస్ ఇస్ వాట్ ది థర్డ్ ఫ్యూచర్ ఆఫ్ parliamentary system of government, రైట్. నెక్స్ట్ మూవింగ్ ఆన్ టు another feature, leadership role of prime minister. Another feature of parliamentary system of government is leadership role of prime minister. Leadership role of prime minister, alright. So prime minister is a key personality in parliamentary system of government. That means the government will be in office as long as the prime minister is in office, రైట్. సో ప్రైమ్ మినిస్టర్ ఆఫీస్లో ఉన్నంత కాలము గవర్నమెంట్ ఆఫీస్లో ఉంటుంది. వన్స్ ద ప్రైమ్ మినిస్టర్ వెకేట్స్, ఇన్ కేస్ ఆఫ్ వెకేషన్ ఆఫ్ ఆఫీస్ ఆఫ్ ప్రైమ్ మినిస్టర్, సో ఎప్పుడైతే ప్రైమ్ మినిస్టర్ ఆఫీస్ వేకెంట్ అవుతుందో అప్పుడు గవర్నమెంట్ కొనసాగదు, రైట్. ది గవర్నమెంట్ విల్ నాట్ బీ ఇన్ పవర్, ది గవర్నమెంట్ విల్ నాట్ బీ ఇన్ పవర్, ఆర్ గవర్నమెంట్ విల్ నాట్ ఫంక్షన్ వితౌట్ ప్రైమ్ మినిస్టర్, రైట్. సో ప్రైమ్ మినిస్టర్ ఈజ్ అ కింగ్ పిన్, రైట్. So in a parliamentary system of government, prime minister is described as primus inter pares. Prime minister is described as primus inter pares, which means right, first among the equals, which means first among the equals. So this is the role description, of prime minister. This is the role description of prime minister, okay, all right. So the government will be in office, the government will stay in the office as long as the prime minister is in office. Alright, in case if Prime Minister vacates, in case of vacation of seat by Prime Minister, then it will lead to dissolution of government or removal of government. Right? So any vacation, not what you call vacation means not going to an holiday trip. Vacancy, right? So don't take another meaning. It means vacancy in the office of Prime Minister. It is vacancy in the office of Prime Minister. In case of vacancy in the office of Prime Minister, the government will be removed or dissolved. ఎప్పుడైతే ప్రైమ్ మినిస్టర్ ఆఫీస్లో వేకెన్సీ ఏర్పడుతుందో దట్ ఈస్ ద గ్రౌండ్ ఫర్ డిజాల్వింగ్ ది గవర్నమెంట్, రిమూవింగ్ ది గవర్నమెంట్. సో వెన్ there will be vacancy in the office of Prime Minister, under what conditions there will be a vacancy in the office of Prime Minister? The conditions for vacancy in the office of Prime Minister. Alright, let us talk about different types of different grounds or different chances of vacancies. అంటే వేకెన్సీ ఎలా ఏర్పడచ్చు, ఏ గ్రౌండ్స్ మీద ఏర్పడచ్చు? ఫస్ట్, డెత్. ఇన్ కేస్ ఆఫ్ డెత్, ఇఫ్ దేర్ ఇస్ అ సడన్ డెత్, కిక్ ద బకెట్ బై ప్రైమ్ మినిస్టర్. రైట్, వాట్ డూ యూ మీన్ బై కిక్ ద బకెట్? అవుట్, అంతే కదా? రైట్, కిక్కింగ్ ద బకెట్. రైట్, డెత్. If Prime Minister resigns from the office, resignation by Prime Minister, right? If Prime Minister is removed, all right, in case completion of tenure, all right. So these are different grounds, right, which may cause vacancy in the office of Prime Minister, right? So చనిపోవడం వల్ల, రెసిగ్నేషన్ వల్ల, ప్రైమ్ మినిస్టర్ని రిమూవ్ చేయడం వల్ల, రైట్, లేదా ప్రైమ్ మినిస్టర్ పదవీ కాలం కంప్లీట్ కావడం, అంటే కంప్లీషన్ ఆఫ్ టెన్యూర్ మీన్స్ పదవీ కాలం. రైట్, ఇన్ దిస్ కేస్, ఇన్ కేస్ ఆఫ్ డెత్ ఆఫ్ ప్రైమ్ మినిస్టర్, when Prime Minister dies, right, the government need not be dissolved. Very, very important. ఈ కండిషన్స్లో, ఇన్ కేస్ ఆఫ్ డెత్ ఆఫ్ ప్రైమ్ మినిస్టర్, ది గవర్నమెంట్ విల్ నాట్ బి డిజాల్వ్డ్. రైట్, సో ది ప్రెసిడెంట్ గివ్స్ ది ఆపర్చునిటీ ఫర్ ది పొలిటికల్ పార్టీ ఇన్ పవర్, ఆర్ ది ప్రెసిడెంట్ గివ్స్ ఆపర్చునిటీ టు ది గవర్నమెంట్ ఇన్ ఆఫీస్ టు చూజ్ ఇట్స్ ఓన్ న్యూ ప్రైమ్ మినిస్టర్ ఆర్ న్యూ లీడర్. ఎప్పుడైతే ప్రైమ్ మినిస్టర్ చనిపోతాడో అలాంటి కండిషన్స్లో ప్రెసిడెంట్ గవర్నమెంట్ని రిమూవ్ చేయాల్సిన అవసరం లేదు. రిమూవ్ చేయకుండా ఏ పార్టీ అయితే గవర్నమెంట్లో ఉంటుందో ఆ పార్టీకి లీడర్ని ఎన్నుకునే అవకాశం, ప్రైమ్ మినిస్టర్ని ఎన్నుకునే అవకాశం ఇస్తాడు. రైట్, సో ఇన్ దిస్ కేస్, దట్ ఈస్ ఇన్ ద కేస్ ఆఫ్ డెత్ ఆఫ్ ప్రైమ్ మినిస్టర్, ద పార్టీ ఇన్ పవర్ ఈస్ గివెన్ ది చాయిస్, రైట్, ఇట్ ఈస్ గివెన్ ది ఛాన్స్ ఆఫ్ ఎలెక్టింగ్ ఇట్స్ న్యూ prime minister or new leader. That is, obviously the one who is elected as leader will become the prime minister. This has come right when Indira Gandhi has died, right? So in the aftermath of death of Indira Gandhi, the Congress party has chosen Rajiv Gandhi as their leader, and Rajiv Gandhi was appointed as prime minister. Right? So this is the best example. So in case of death of prime minister, here the president need not remove the government or dissolve the government, but the chance is given to the political party that is in power to elect its own new leader, to elect its own what we call prime minister. But in second and third case, that is in the case of resignation and removal, right, the government of the day is removed automatically. Remember, once the prime minister resigns, or when what you call the prime minister is removed, automatically the government comes down. Automatically the government comes down. In case of second and third condition, right, if prime minister want to resign to his office, to whom the resignation will be given? Right, if prime minister want to resign from the office, To whom the resignation should be given? Guess చేయండి. President. It is president. Right? It is the president who is appointing. So the resignation will be given to president. Alright? So removed. Alright? Who removes prime minister? It is in the parliament. It is the business of parliament. Alright? So remember, it is the business of parliament. Based upon the resolution passed in parliament, alright, the prime minister is removed. President will not remove directly. President has no power to remove the government or prime minister directly without passing a resolution in what you call parliament. Parliament lo తీర్మానం pass చేయకుండా, alright, president cannot act. Alright, so we have no confidence motion or we have censure motion. Even there is an instrument called as censure motion. Avani tarvata we will discuss, right, not now. But remember, without passing a resolution in the parliament, the president cannot remove the members. Alright, so this is one thing. But when prime minister is removed or resigned, alright, the government comes, the government falls or the government is removed automatically. But in this case, who will act as acting prime minister? Just now I said that president always acts on the advice of prime minister. Now the prime minister has resigned or removed. There is a vacancy. In this case, on whose advice the president will act? Right? Prime minister resign చేసింది అనుకుందాం. మరి ఇలాంటి కండిషన్లో ప్రెసిడెంట్ ఎవరి అడ్వైస్ మీద యాక్ట్ చేస్తాడు? On whose advice does president acts? మెజారిటీ పార్టీ లీడర్ లేదా రిమూవ్ అయిపోయింది. అర్థమైందా? ప్రైమ్ మినిస్టర్ మీన్స్ ఇట్ ఈస్ ద లీడర్ ఆఫ్ మెజారిటీ పార్టీ. అతనే కదా పోయింది. గుర్తుపెట్టుకోండి. ఇట్ ఈస్ నాట్ స్పీకర్ ఆఫ్ లోక్సభ. ఇట్ ఈస్ నాట్ ది అంటిల్ న్యూ ప్రైమ్ మినిస్టర్ ఈజ్ ఎలెక్టెడ్, until new prime minister is appointed, until new leader of the majority party is elected, it is the outgoing prime minister. Very important point, right? It is the outgoing prime minister who will act as acting prime minister, right? It is the outgoing prime minister who will act as acting prime minister and who will advise president of India, right? కొత్త ప్రైమ్ మినిస్టర్ ఎన్నికయ్యేంత వరకు, కొత్త ప్రైమ్ మినిస్టర్ని అపాయింట్ చేసుకునేంత వరకు పాత ప్రైమ్ మినిస్టరే వాడు రిజైన్ చేసినా సరే, రిమూవ్ అయినా సరే, కొత్త ప్రైమ్ మినిస్టర్ వచ్చేంత వరకు తనమే ఆఫీస్లో ఉంటాడు. ది అవుట్ గోయింగ్ ప్రైమ్ మినిస్టర్ విల్ బీ ఇన్ ది ఆఫీస్ అండ్ హీ విల్ అడ్వైజ్ ది ప్రెసిడెంట్. అండ్ ఇట్ ఈస్ ఇన్ దీస్ కండిషన్స్ ది ప్రెసిడెంట్ ఆఫ్ ఇండియా హ్యాస్ బీన్ గివెన్ ద పవర్ ఆఫ్ విటో పవర్స్. మీకు గుర్తుందో లేదో 1861 యాక్ట్ చెప్పినప్పుడు ఐ హావ్ మెన్షన్ దిస్ వాట్ యు కాల్ విటో పవర్స్. సో it is in these conditions the president has a chance of using veto powers. Think that the outgoing prime minister has advised something. And this prime minister has no majority. In majority లేదు. మరి ఆ మెజారిటీ లేని ప్రైమ్ మినిస్టర్ చెప్పినట్టు నేను వినాలా వద్దా? వెదర్ ప్రెసిడెంట్ షుడ్ లిజన్ టు ద వర్డ్స్ ఆఫ్ ది ప్రైమ్ మినిస్టర్ హూ హ్యాస్ నో మెజారిటీ. మీరు చెప్పండి, షుడ్ హీ లిజన్ ఆర్ నాట్? యూ జస్ట్ థింక్ whether president should listen to the words of a prime minister who has no majority, who doesn't command any majority. అలాంటి వాళ్ళు చెప్పిన మాట వినాల్సిన అవసరం లేదు. ఎందుకు? నీకేం మెజార్టీ లేదు, నేను ఎందుకు నీ మాట వింటా అంటాం, అంతేనా? నీకైతే మెజార్టీ లేదు, నువ్వు చెప్పినట్టు నేను ఎందుకు వినాలి? అర్థమవుందా? అంటే ప్రెసిడెంట్ ఎవరి మాట వింటాడు? ప్రెసిడెంట్ విల్ యాక్ట్ ఆన్ ది అడ్వైస్ ఆఫ్ ప్రైమ్ మినిస్టర్ హూ హ్యాస్ మెజారిటీ. In case prime minister loses majority, what president can do? President has every power to use his veto powers. This is a case where president of India can use veto powers. Again I will explain this when I deal the powers of president. Very important for exam, both for prelims as well as mains. Remember, there won't be any UPSC question paper without a question on powers of president. Challenging, definite question on powers of president. So any candidate who is writing UPSC exam, they should be thorough with the powers of president, powers and functions of president. President మీద క్వశ్చన్ లేకుండా క్వశ్చన్ పేపర్ ఉండదు. ప్రెసిడెంట్, పార్లమెంట్, ప్రియాంబుల్, ఫండమెంటల్ రైట్స్. ఇప్పుడు ఏం చెప్పినా 4 టాపిక్లు చెప్పినా కదా. సో 4 టాపిక్ల నుంచి 4 క్వశ్చన్లు గ్యారంటీ పడతాయి ఎగ్జామ్లో. ప్రియాంబుల్, ఫండమెంటల్ రైట్స్, వాట్ యు కాల్ ప్రెసిడెంట్, పార్లమెంట్, salient features. Alright, so this is the condition, right? That is the entire parliamentary system of government. The entire parliamentary system of government, it revolves around prime minister. It revolves around prime minister. It means this government will be in office. This government will be in office as long as there is prime minister. Once prime minister resigns, or what you call, once there is a vacancy caused because of resignation and removal, the government will also come down. So this is another feature of parliamentary system of government. Leadership role of prime minister. Alright, am I clear to you? Alright, next going on to the another feature of parliamentary system of government, that is dissolution of lower house. Dissolution of lower house. So what is lower house in India? It is Lok Sabha. Alright, so what are different parts of or different elements of parliament? If we take Indian parliament, what are different elements of parliament? Who comes first in Indian parliament? It is president. It is president. Then it is Rajya Sabha. Then it is Lok Sabha. Alright, so Lok Sabha is the lower house of Indian parliament. So it is dissolution of Lok Sabha because there is a tenure for Lok Sabha. Rajya Sabha is a permanent body. Rajya Sabha is a permanent body, whereas Lok Sabha has a tenure. What is the tenure of Lok Sabha? The tenure of Lok Sabha is 5 years. Right? It is 5 years. The tenure of Lok Sabha is 5 years. That means once elected, the members of Lok Sabha, will be in office for a period of 5 years. And after 5 years, what will happen? Alright, so after 5 years, after expiry of 5 years, the house will be dissolved. That is, right, normally after completion of 5 years, that is 5 years, that is calculated from the day of first office. Alright, from the day of assuming of office. That means what? Election should be held after completion of 5 years or before completion of 5 years? Remember, the elections will be held, right, within a period of 6 months before completion of tenure of Lok Sabha. So normally it is 6 months before completion of tenure of Lok Sabha. That is, the new Lok Sabha should be elected. The new Lok Sabha should be elected within a period of, the new Lok Sabha should be elected within a period of 6 months before completion of tenure. 6 months before completion of tenure. ikkade unadu, ikkada pettu. It is 6 months before completion of tenure, right? That is what the elections. This is normal condition. That is, we have a tenure for Lok Sabha and the Lok Sabha is dissolved, right, within a period of, that is after the expiry of 5 years. But right, election should be held to the new Lok Sabha, right, before completion of tenure. Alright, normally it is within a period of 6 months before the completion. This is normal condition. But apart from this, ఇదే కాకుండా అంటే తన పదవీ కాలం కాకుండా, టెన్యూర్ మీన్స్ తెలుగులో పదవీ కాలం, ఇదే కాకుండా జస్ట్ నో హ్యావ్ మెన్షన్, రైట్, when there is no majority party available, when there is no majority party available to form the government, when there is no majority party available to form the government, again it is in that condition, president has every power to dissolve the Lok Sabha. So Lok Sabha can be dissolved, right? Lok Sabha can be dissolved when there is no majority party, when there is no majority party to form the government. Majority to party to form the government. Even in such condition, president can dissolve the Lok Sabha. Need not wait for 5 years. That is, this Lok Sabha will be dissolved. Another one point of caution is, this Lok Sabha will be dissolved when there is no other option. That is, president will not be in a hurry. తొందరపడి లోక్ సభని డిజాల్వ్ చేయడు, తొందరపడి డిజాల్వ్ చేయాల్సిన అవసరం లేదు, రైట్? సో ఆఫ్టర్ ఎక్స్ప్లోరింగ్ ఆల్ ది ఆప్షన్స్, that is after giving chance to every political party, that is after giving chance to 2 or 3 political parties, when no political party comes forward to form the government, it is then the president can go for dissolution. That is after giving chance to other political parties, that is after giving chance to alternate political parties to form the government, and even in such condition the political party doesn't comes forward to form the government, and when there is no other option available, ఏ ఆల్టర్నేట్ అవైలబుల్లో లేనప్పుడు, ఏ ఆప్షన్ లేనప్పుడు మాత్రమే రైట్ లోక్సభని డిజాల్వ్ చేయాలి. ఎందుకు? ఇండియాలో ఎలక్షన్స్ పెట్టాలంటే అంత ఈజీ కాదు, అంత ఈజీయా? రైట్? ప్రతి ఎలక్షన్కి డబ్బులు పంచడం చాలా కష్టం కదా. డబ్బులు పంచుతారా ఎలక్షన్స్లో? పంచుతారా? ఎంత? విషయంలో ఓపెన్గా చెప్తారు, ఇట్లా చెప్పినాడు యూట్యూబ్లో కొడతారు మనల్ని, రైట్? సో మనకి ఎంత బాగాలేకున్నా కానీ వాట్ వీ షుడ్ సే ఈజ్ దట్ వీ డోంట్ టేక్ మనీ, రైట్? సో we always talk about free and fair elections. What do you mean by free and fair elections? Alright, no money, no muzzle power, right? No mandu power. Mediums, money, muzzle and mandu, alright? ఇప్పుడు అవి మారిపోయినాయి, alright? అవి మారిపోయినాయి. Today we see a new kind of things, alright? Free RTC bus. If you vote, free laptop. If you vote, ఇంకేమున్నాయి? Free motorcycle. Alright? So there was one candidate who promised all the basic things which are required for a newly married couple. That fellow said that one of the candidates who was contesting from Tamil Nadu, he promised to provide all the things, and even one of the independent candidate who contested last assembly elections in from Mushirabad, he said the same thing. And one candidate has promised of providing 1 crore rupee for every voter, right, if voted to power, if he is elected. Of course, it is only to bring an enlightenment, alright? So don't think that this is a violation of free and fair elections. Providing of free gifts, announcing of freebies, don't think it as a violation of free and fair elections. In the name of election manifesto, in the name of these false promises made, right? Don't see it as a violation of free and fair elections. Now the political parties promise everything, and it provides every freebies, but after getting into power, will they provide all these things? No. At most for 6 months or for 1 year. After 1 year, they will discontinue everything. So don't think this as a violation of free and fair elections. First free అని చెప్పి తర్వాత అన్ని తీసేయడము ఫ్రీ అండ్ ఫెయిర్ ఎలక్షన్స్కి violation కాదా? It is definitely a violation of free and fair elections. Alright, of course, it is not our topic now. So my point is, alright, it is not that easy to conduct elections in India. That is the reason why, right, president should not be in a hurry, or president will not be in a hurry to conduct elections in India. So after exploring all the alternatives, when there is no alternative available for the President of India, it is only then the Lok Sabha will be dissolved, right? So this is what about the dissolution of Lok Sabha. So these are different elements or different features of parliamentary system of government, right? So let me rewind or let me sum up all these features of parliamentary system of government. So we have discussed nominal and real executive, collective responsibility and individual responsibility. Third one, dual membership. Fourth one, leadership role of Prime Minister. Fifth one, dissolution of Lok Sabha or lower house, right? So these are different features of parliamentary system of government. Am I clear on these points? Take down a question. All right, take down a question. All right, anyone, if you want to submit the answers, you can submit directly here in the classroom, or you can send your answers to our email kakatiyasacademy@gmail.com, right? So first take down a question. Explain the features of parliamentary system of government. Explain the features of parliamentary system of government. Explain the features of parliamentary system of government and how Indian parliamentary system is different from British parliamentary system, and how Indian parliamentary system is different from British parliamentary system. Once again I repeat the question. Explain the features of parliamentary system of government and how Indian parliamentary system of government is different from British parliamentary system, right? One thing I am very particular about is I want every aspirant to write the answers, because if you want to crack service, if you want to get a rank, from day one start writing. From day one you should write the answers, because most of us spend more time in reading and revising, but right, we are least bothered about writing answers. As long as you keep your pen on the paper, never expect a rank, one thing. And writing exams, I'm challenging every week there will be an exam. There won't be a week without any exam, right? I want you to practice like me. In my first attempt, I gave my first attempt by doing job. I was working for Coromandel Fertilizers, right? So, and my first attempt I cleared prelims without any coaching, and I know how to clear exam. The reason for that clearing is I used to practice at least 100 questions every day, 30 from each subject. I used to choose 3 subjects, and from the 3 subjects I used to practice 30 each. That means 30 into 3, 90 questions. And least bother about the number of marks. I used to cry when I wrote my first exam, or when I was practicing in my initial days. I used to get 3 out of 30, 4 out of 30. I used to feel shy, I used to feel bad, I used to cry. 30 క్వశ్చన్స్ ప్రాక్టీస్ చేస్తే 3-4 మార్కులు వచ్చేవి. చాలా బాధ అనిపించేది నాకు. నేను పనికి రానేమో సివిల్స్కి, నాకు ఒకటే మైండ్ ఉండేది, నేను పనికిరాను కావచ్చు. అంటే 100 క్వశ్చన్స్ ప్రాక్టీస్ చేస్తే హార్డ్లీ ఐ యూస్ టు గెట్ 10, 11, 12. చాలా బాధ అనిపించేది. బట్ ఐ నెవర్ స్టాప్డ్. I went on practicing. That is how I even openly challenge anyone who comes to me. నేను చెప్పినట్టు చెయ్యండి, గ్యారంటీ క్వాలిఫై అవుతారు. ఈవెన్ అన్ యావరేజ్ స్టూడెంట్, కొంతమందికి చాలా షై ఉంటుంది. ఐ హావ్ సీన్ పీపుల్, నేను బీటెక్ థర్డ్ క్లాస్లో పాస్ అయినా, ఈవెన్ వన్ ఆఫ్ మై క్లోజ్ ఫ్రెండ్ who is in IRS IT now, who got service in 2010. He got 52% in BTech. In his 6th attempt, he got service. And he was very shy about this percentage. మన పర్సంటేజ్ చూసి యూపీఎస్సీ మార్క్స్ వేస్తుందా, మన ఎడ్యుకేషనల్ బ్యాక్గ్రౌండ్ చూసి యూపీఎస్సీ మార్క్స్ వేస్తుందా అంటే, మీ ఎడ్యుకేషనల్ బ్యాక్గ్రౌండ్కి యూపీఎస్సీ మార్క్స్కి సంబంధమే లేదు. బీ వెరీ క్లియర్ దట్ right, there is no relation about your academic background with UPSC. It is all about your UPSC marks and your presence of mind. మీ ఎడ్యుకేషనల్ బ్యాక్గ్రౌండ్ పాస్ట్ ఈజ్ పాస్ట్, దానికి యూపీఎస్సీ సంబంధం పెట్టుకోకండి. ద ఓన్లీ థింగ్ ఈజ్ కీప్ రైటింగ్ ఎగ్జామ్స్, రైట్, స్టార్ట్ ప్రాక్టీసింగ్. ఎవరైతే రైట్ అంటే షెడ్యూల్ తప్పకుండా ప్రాక్టీస్ చేస్తారో వాళ్ళకే ర్యాంకులు. There is no other shortcut, right? Never think about marks. Don't be shy. వాళ్ళు ఏమనుకుంటారు, సార్ ఏమనుకుంటాడు, మిగతా వాళ్ళు ఏమనుకుంటారు, ఎవడేమనుకున్నా సంబంధం లేదు. మనకి ఎన్ని మార్కులు వచ్చినా సంబంధం లేదు. కాకపోతే వెదర్ వీఆర్ ఇంప్రూవింగ్ ఆర్ నాట్ ఈజ్ మోర్ ఇంపార్టెంట్. అండ్ ఐమ్ ఛాలెంజింగ్, ఐ విల్ గివ్ ద బెస్ట్ క్వశ్చన్ పేపర్స్. నేను చేసిన క్వశ్చన్సే కాదు. రిమెంబర్, ఇట్ ఈస్ నాట్ జస్ట్ మై ఓన్ క్వశ్చన్స్, రైట్? మై హ్యాబిట్, మై ఇంటెన్షన్ ఈజ్ టు మేక్ యూ క్లియర్ ఎగ్జామ్. సో ఇండియాలో ఎన్ని బెస్ట్ క్వశ్చన్ పేపర్స్ ఉన్నాయో అన్ని క్వశ్చన్ పేపర్స్ నా దగ్గర ఉన్నాయి. అన్నింటినీ సెగ్రిగేట్ చేసి పెట్టించిన, టాపిక్ వైజ్ చేసి పెట్టించిన. మీరు చేయాల్సిందల్లా ప్రాక్టీస్ చేయడమే. నిర్మోమాటంగా, నిర్భయంగా ప్రాక్టీస్ చేయండి. 6 నెలలు కంటిన్యూస్గా ప్రాక్టీస్ చేయండి. డెఫినెట్లీ యూ విల్ బి ఇన్ సర్వీస్, రైట్? సో దీస్ ఆర్ డిఫరెంట్ ఎలిమెంట్స్ ఆఫ్ what you call parliamentary system of government, right? So let us now move towards another outstanding feature of Indian constitution. Going to another outstanding feature, that is, we have adopted a quasi federal system. We have adopted a quasi federal system. So Indian federation is a quasi federal one. That is, we are neither totally unitary. Indian federation is not totally unitary nor totally federal. All right? So we have 2 major systems. One is unitary systems and the other one is federal systems. One is unitary systems and the other one is federal systems. All right? Unitary system and federal system, right? The best example of unitary system is Britain. The best example of unitary system is Britain, whereas the best example of federal system is America. All right? The best example of federal system is America. All right? And in between these two extremes, we have quasi federal systems. The examples are Canada, India, Australia, right? So but coming to Indian system, so Indian federal system, right, we have adopted our federal system by seeing Canada. That is, Canada was the inspiration to adopt our quasi federal system, right? So India has adopted this quasi federal system from Canadian system. All right? So that means in India we have features of both unitary system as well as federal system, right? We have both the features. We have both features of unitary system and federal system. Features of both unitary system and federal system. But all right, features of unitary system are more. All right, the features of unitary system are more when compared to federal system. All right, The features of unitary system are more when compared to the federal features. That is the reason why Indian Federation is called as more unitary and less federal, right? Indian Federation is more unitary. It is more unitary and less federal. It is more unitary and less federal, right? So that is the description of Indian Federation. So we have a separate chapter. We have a separate chapter in polity about federation, right? So when we see this, when we compare division of powers, when we compare division of powers, the powers given to union are more when compared to the powers given to states, right? అంటే ఇండియాలో యూనియన్ గవర్నమెంట్ పవర్సే ఎక్కువ స్టేట్ గవర్నమెంట్స్ కంటే కూడా, రైట్? ద పవర్స్ ఆఫ్ యూనియన్ ఆర్ మోర్ వెన్ కంపేర్డ్ టు ది పవర్స్ ఆఫ్ స్టేట్. దట్ ఈస్ ద రీజన్ వై వి సే ఇండియా యాజ్ మోర్ యూనిటరీ, it is more unitary and less federal, or a federation with centralizing tendency. It is also described as Indian Federation is also described as a federation with centralizing tendency. Federation with centralizing tendency, right? So this is what the nature of Indian Federation, right? So if you take Indian Constitution, Article 1 of Indian Constitution describes India as a union with federal features, a union that cannot be destroyed, undestructible union. Indian Federation is, that is Indian Union is undestructible, right? So Article 1 of Indian Constitution, Article 1 of Indian Constitution describes India as, right, a union with federal features. India is a union with federal features, that is, right, a union that is undestructible or undestroyed. So this is what about the nature of federation. So we will discuss. Quasi means partly, right? Quasi means partly. Sagam sagam, right? It is partly unitary and partly federal, right? It is partly unitary and partly federal, right? So this is the feature of Indian Federation. And if you take Indian Constitution, you take another outstanding feature, all right? Coming to another outstanding feature of Indian Constitution, Indian Constitution is both rigid and flexible constitution. That is, the framers of Indian Constitution, the framers of our constitution has provided a constitution having both rigidity as well as flexibility, right? So Indian Constitution is both rigid and flexible. Indian Constitution is both rigid and flexible constitution, all right? So what do you, so this is, so both this rigidity and flexibility, it is with respect to amendability of Indian Constitution. It is about amendability of Indian Constitution, right? So amending means changing. Amending means changing. Remember, the framers of Indian Constitution has provided a constitution which can be changed. Amendments, amend means change, right? Amend and arthamu changing, marpu, right? So whenever required, Indian Constitution can be amended, right? So based upon these amending features, based upon the features of amending, Indian Constitution is described as rigid and flexible, right? That means what? There are certain features of Indian Constitution which can be amended by Parliament alone, right? So majority part of Indian Constitution, remember, majority part of Indian Constitution, majority part of Constitution can be amended by parliament alone. అంటే స్టేట్స్కి సంబంధం లేకుండా without the involvement of states, parliament alone can amend the constitution. All right, and there are few features. All right, minor features are few features. There are few features which requires involvement of states. That is, states involvement is seen only in very few features, or features like amending provisions relating to president and vice president, all right, changes to center state relations, bringing changes to the powers and functions of Supreme Court and High Court, right, amending Article 368, So it is in these features, it is in these areas where we see the involvement of states. That is, the states involvement is seen in bringing changes to these features. But except this, all other features are amended by parliament alone without the involvement of states. అంటే ఇవి తప్పించి, ఈ ఫీచర్స్ తప్పించి మిగతావన్నీ కూడా పార్లమెంటే, స్టేట్స్కి సంబంధం లేకుండా, స్టేట్స్తోని ఎలాంటి సంబంధం లేకుండా పార్లమెంట్ తనకు తానుగా అమెండ్ చేసుకునే అధికారం. వీటిలో మాత్రము రైట్ ఇట్ రిక్వైర్స్ రాటిఫికేషన్ బై అట్లీస్ట్ హాఫ్ ఆఫ్ ది స్టేట్స్. సో అంటే ఈ ప్రొవిజన్స్కి సంబంధించి, ఈ సబ్జెక్ట్స్కి సంబంధించి రైట్ రాటిఫికేషన్ బై అట్లీస్ట్ హాఫ్ ఆఫ్ ది స్టేట్స్. రైట్, రాటిఫికేషన్ మీన్స్ ఆమోదం. రైట్, అట్లీస్ట్ ఉన్న స్టేట్స్లో సగం స్టేట్స్ అన్న ఆమోదించాలి. రైట్, అంటే అట్లీస్ట్ హాఫ్ ఆఫ్ ద స్టేట్స్ యాక్సెప్ట్ చేయకుండా చేంజెస్ చేయడానికి వీల్లేదు. రైట్, సో దిస్ ఈస్ ది బ్రాడర్ వాట్ యు కాల్ features of amendability of Indian Constitution. That is, majority part of Indian Constitution can be amended by Parliament alone, but coming to certain features like President, Vice President, Center State relations, Supreme Court, High Court, the Article 368, it is in these cases we require the ratification by at least half of the states, not all the states. అన్ని స్టేట్స్లో అవసరం లేదు, ఉన్న స్టేట్స్లో సగం స్టేట్స్ రాటిఫై చేస్తే చాలు. అవుట్ ఆఫ్ ది ఎగ్జిస్టింగ్ స్టేట్స్ it is acceptance by at least half of the states. Right, so because of this we call Indian Constitution as rigid as well as flexible. Right, so we have one article, that is Article 368. Remember, Article 368 deals with amendments. Right, it deals with the power of Parliament to amend the Constitution as well as the procedure to amend the Constitution. So remember, it deals with power of Parliament to amend the Constitution as well as the procedure for amending the Constitution. Alright, so you should always remember this Article 368. దీని మీద అంటే పవర్ టు అమెండ్ ది కాన్స్టిట్యూషన్, ఆన్ ద ఇష్యూ ఆఫ్ అమెండింగ్ కాన్స్టిట్యూషన్, at least 12 questions have come, 12 times questions have come in UPSC. Alright, so that is the importance of this topic. Alright, and remember, majority provisions of Indian Constitution can be amended without following this Article 368. So without following this Article 368, we can amend majority provisions of Indian Constitution. And అర్థం ఏంటిది, majority part can be amended by ordinary law. Right, so Constitution can be amended by ordinary laws, it can be amended by laws passing according to Article 368, laws passing according to, let me write firstly, so majority part can be amended by ordinary laws, right, there are certain areas or there are certain provisions which need to be amended according to Article 368. And again within this we have two categories. One is those Parliament alone and those requires ratification by at least half of the states. Ratification by half of the states. So that means we have three different ways. We have three different ways of amending Indian Constitution. We have three different ways of amending Constitution. One is by ordinary law, one is by following Article 368 by Parliament alone, and third one is by following Article 368, right, with ratification by states. So this is one, this is second provision, and this is the third one. So these are three different ways. These are three different ways of amending the Constitution. So it is again an important topic for exam. But as of now, remember that there are three different ways, right, where the Constitution can be amended by ordinary laws as well as by following Article 368. So when we analyze this procedure, we can say that Indian Constitution is both rigid as well as flexible. All right. So take down a question. Take down a question. So don't write what we call a broader answer. Just give a brief answer. Explain different ways of. Explain different ways of. Explain different ways of amending Indian Constitution. Explain different ways of amending Indian Constitution and why it is called as rigid and flexible Constitution. And why it is called as rigid and flexible Constitution. Why it is called as rigid and flexible Constitution. Okay. So this is about rigid and flexible Constitution. So this is one of the outstanding feature of Indian Constitution. So we'll take a break of 5 minutes. Again after 5 minutes I'll start the class. All right. So don't run away. Wait for 5 minutes. So coming to other features of Indian Constitution or other outstanding features of Indian Constitution. Other outstanding features of Indian Constitution, which includes rule of law. All right. Another outstanding feature of Indian Constitution is rule of law. All right. So, if you take this rule of law, right, a concept that is actually taken from A.V. Dacey. It is given by A.V. Dacey. All right. All right. So he has commented. So while commenting on, so he is a British constitutional expert, philosopher. So while commenting on British Constitution and as a criticism to French concept of droit administratif. Droit administratif. Right. So this is a French concept. So as a criticism to this droit administratif, all right, A.V. Dacey has given this concept of rule of law. A.V. Dacey has given this concept of rule of law, but it has much influence on Indian Constitution. It has much influence on Indian Constitution. So we can say that rule of law is backbone of fundamental rights. All right, it is backbone of fundamental rights, and it is backbone of fundamental rights and the entire Constitution. All right, because every element of rule of law, it is present in this fundamental rights. It is followed in Indian Constitution. It is present in fundamental rights. All right. So this is, let me talk about these elements of rule of law. So when we talk about rule of law, so rule of law has three important elements. Rule of law has three important elements. One is equality before law. Second one is absence of arbitrariness. Absence of arbitrariness. And third one is primacy to the rights of individuals. Right? So these are three important elements of rule of law: equality before law, absence of arbitrariness, primacy to the rights of individuals. All right. And all these three concepts or all these three elements, they are clearly present in Indian Constitution, particularly in Chapter 3 of Indian Constitution, that is fundamental rights. So let me explain each of these concepts. First one, equality before law. The first thing is, it is equality before law. Right? The issue is, I'll ask one question. Before going to this concept, I'll ask one question. Law. Who make the laws? Who are lawmakers? It is the elected representatives or parliamentarians or MPs. Right? So the members of government. Right? So it is the, primarily it is the legislature. It is the parliament. Right? parliament which makes laws. Now, whether lawmakers and common people, whether they are same, or do lawmakers have any privilege? Do lawmakers have any kind of what you call the amount of do they have any special rights given to them? Do they have any special privileges? Very, very important issue in Indian constitution. Do lawmakers enjoy any privilege? Whether lawmakers are equal before law, same as common citizens, or do they have any exemptions? Whether the laws that are made by lawmakers, whether it is for all or only for the common people? For all. That means it is equally applicable to both common people as well as lawmakers. That means you say that there is no exemption given to lawmakers. So that is what. There was a debate. There was a debate that lawmakers are different. There was a debate that lawmakers are exempted. Right? In the 14th century, 15th century, there was a debate that the lawmakers are not same as that of common people. కామన్ పీపుల్ వేరు, లామేకర్స్ వేరు. ఏ చట్టమైనా సరే, ఏ లా అయినా సరే అది కామన్ పీపుల్కే కానీ మా లాంటి లా మేకర్స్ కోసం కాదు. ఇది అంటే యూరోపియన్ కంట్రీస్లో ఉన్న సిస్టమ్ ఇది. సో దీనికి ఏవిడేసి ఇచ్చిన కాన్సెప్ట్ ఏంటిదంటే అందరూ సమానమే. ఎవ్రీవన్ ఈజ్ ఈక్వల్ ఇన్ ఫ్రంట్ ఆఫ్ లా, ఈవెన్ అ లా మేకర్. ఈవెన్ ది లా మేకర్స్ ఆర్ పర్టికులర్, దే ఆర్ ఈక్వల్ ఇన్ ఫ్రంట్ ఆఫ్ ది లా. Right? A law that is made, the law that is made equally applicable. It is equally applicable to everyone, every citizen, every individual, whether they are lawmakers or what called common people. That means there is no exemption to anyone. Right? So wherever there is equality, ఎక్కడైతే ఈక్వాలిటీ ఉంటుందో అక్కడ ఎలాంటి ప్రివిలేజెస్ ఉండవు. So non-existence of any privilege, right? So equality, the concept of equality clearly prohibits, right? This equality prohibits all the forms of privileges, non-existence of privileges, non-existence of special rights. What do you mean by privileges? Giving certain special rights. So non-existence of any special right. It is all for everyone. It is same for everyone. All are equal, including the lawmakers. The same thing is in India, except if you take Indian constitution, right, there is an exemption given to president as well as governor. All the acts done by president and governor in their official capacity, right, they are exempted. Right? So this is the only privilege given to president and governor. Right? But other than that, right, all are equal in front of law. Right? So even for president and governor, it is for their official acts and those acts done during the term of office, but not acts outside the office. వాళ్ళు ఆఫీస్లో ఉన్నంత వరకు అఫీషియల్గా ఏ వర్క్ అయినా సరే, వాళ్ళు ఆఫీస్లో ఉన్నంత వరకు ఏ పని చేసినా సరే వాళ్ళకు మన ఎగ్జామ్షన్ ఉంటుంది. దట్ ఈస్ దే ఆర్ బీన్ గివెన్ అ కైండ్ ఆఫ్ ప్రివిలేజ్. బట్ వన్స్ దే కంప్లీట్ ది ఆఫీస్ ఆర్ యాక్ట్స్ డన్ outside of the office which are not connected with the official work, right, there is no privilege extended to them. So equality, it is equality means that all are equal, non-existence of any privilege, non-existence of any privilege. రైట్, నేను ఎంపీని, రైట్, నేను ఎమ్మెల్యేని, నా ఇష్టం ఉన్నట్టు మాట్లాడతా, నా ఇష్టంలో డ్యాన్స్ చేస్తా అంటే కుదరదు. ఇండియన్ కాన్స్టిట్యూషన్ ప్రకారము నువ్వు ఎంపీ అయినా సరే, ఎమ్మెల్యే అయినా సరే, నార్మల్లీ వి సీ దిస్, రైట్, నార్మల్లీ వి సీ ద ఇష్యూస్ ఆఫ్ టోల్ గేట్ దగ్గర ఎమ్మెల్యే, ఎంపీ అది వీరవిహారం, వీరాంగం అని చెప్తే పేపర్లో చూస్తూ ఉంటాం. టోల్ గేట్ సిబ్బందిపై చేయి చేసుకున్న ఎమ్మెల్యే మనుషులు, ఎంపీ మనుషులని. ఎంపీలు అయితే, ఎమ్మెల్యే అయితే వాళ్ళకి సపరేట్ రైట్స్ ఉన్నాయా? ఏం లేవు కదా. రైట్, వాళ్ళకు ప్రివిలేజెస్ ఎప్పటి వరకు ఉన్నాయి? రిమెంబర్, ఈవెన్ ఎంపీస్ అండ్ ఎమ్మెల్యేస్ ఆర్ గివెన్ ప్రివిలేజెస్, బట్ దట్ ప్రివిలేజెస్, రైట్, దే ఆర్ యూస్డ్ అండ్ దే షుడ్ బి యూస్డ్ విత్ ఇన్ ద 4 walls ఆఫ్ లెజిస్లేచర్, బట్ నాట్ అవుట్ సైడ్ ఆఫ్ 4 walls ఆఫ్ లెజిస్లేచర్. Article 104 provides privileges. బట్ దట్ ప్రివిలేజెస్ ఆర్ విత్ ఇన్ ది ఫోర్ వాల్స్ ఆఫ్ లెజిస్లేచర్. సో హౌస్లో ఉన్నంత వరకే ప్రివిలేజెస్, హౌస్ బయటికి వచ్చిన తర్వాత ఎలాంటి ప్రివిలేజెస్ అప్లికబుల్ కావు. Once the MP or MLA is outside the house, they are same as that of common citizen. All the laws that are made are equally applicable to everyone. Otherwise, ఇంకో లా చెప్పాలంటే all are equal in front of the law except president and governor. ఇది ఒక్కటి గుర్తుపెట్టుకోండి, రైట్? Except president and governor, right? This is what equality. And if you take Indian preamble of Indian Constitution, one of the goals prescribed in preamble of Indian Constitution, one of the goals prescribed in preamble of Indian Constitution is all are equal. It is right, that is the goal of equality, social, economic and political equality. It is all the three forms of equality, right? So it is clearly present, right? Second one is second element of rule of law is absence of arbitrariness. It is absence of arbitrariness. So most of you don't know the meaning of this word arbitrary. Do anyone of you in the class, do you know the meaning of arbitrary? Right? Arbitrary means acting without a law, right? Arbitrary means acting without a law. That means what? In other words, we can say that every act of the state, every act should be according to law. Every act should be according to law, right? It should be according to law. చట్ట ప్రకారము, సినిమాలు చూస్తూ అంటాం కదా, రైట్? ప్రతిదీ కూడా చట్ట ప్రకారమే ఉండాలి. ఏ పని చేసినా, వాట్ ఎవర్ ది యాక్ట్స్, every act of the government, every act of the state, it should be according to law. It should be according to procedure established by law, right? According to law, and it should be according to what? It should be according to procedure established by law. It should be a procedure, it should be according to procedure established by law. So this is clearly mentioned even in Indian Constitution, right? Article 21 of Indian Constitution, in Article 21 of Indian Constitution, it is clearly said that every act of the executive should be according to procedure established by law. This word you can see in Article 21, a word that is taken from British Constitution. A word that is taken from British Constitution. Alright? So every act of executive should be according to procedure established by law. That means everything should be according to law. Not only according to law, it should be according to the procedure, right? So if either law is not followed, or if the procedure given in the law is not followed, then such acts will be called as arbitrary acts, right? So arbitrary means what? It means not acting according to law, not following the procedure given by law. In the coming classes, I will explain these terms, these concepts again by using case laws. I'll explain this by using A.K. Gopalan case, Menaka Gandhi case. That is by using Supreme Court judgments. I'll go through these issues because they are very, very, very important for exam, right? But as of now, we are not going into the details of entire polity. We are trying to understand the basic features or the outstanding features, important features of Indian Constitution. So one of the important feature is we have the concept of rule of law, which is followed. The first element of rule of law is equality, and second element is absence of arbitrariness. That means every act of the state, right? So here, what do you mean by state? What do you mean by state? State means it includes all the institutions, all the branches and all the organs, right? It is a nation. This is not the exact technical definition. It is just what you call a layman definition to make you understand. ఇది ఎగ్జాక్ట్ డెఫినేషన్ కాదు, అది ఇప్పుడు చెప్పండి మీకు, రైట్? కాకపోతే టైం బీయింగ్ స్టేట్ అంటే ఏంటిది? అ నేషన్, రైట్, విచ్ ఇంక్లూడ్స్ ఆల్ ఇట్స్ బ్రాంచెస్, దట్ ఈస్ legislature, executive and judiciary, right? It includes all its branches and all the institutions, that is every institution, every government office, any kind of institution, alright? So all this comes under the definition of state. అంటే ఎవరు ఏ పని చేసినా అది చట్ట ప్రకారమే ఉండాలి. It should be according to law and it should be according to the procedure given by law. Okay, so this is one thing, right? The second element of rule of law, right? And third element of rule of law is primacy given to rights of individual. So at any cost the rights of individual should not be violated, all right? Primacy of rights of individuals. Primacy of rights of individuals. State and see here, coming to the terminology, right? State denotes the political entity. Nation normally has a geographical entity. State is a political entity which includes all its people who are politically organized. So there is a hairline difference, right? There is a hairline difference, right? In political science terminology, we use the word state to refer a nation, right? A nation which consists of group of people who are politically organized. That is what the exact definition, right? So what you call it is a group of people living in a particular a territory who are politically organized, and we call that territory as a nation, right? And it is a state, all right? So if you take India as a nation, India as a whole is one political entity. Within this political entity again we have subdivisions, that is regional things, that is regional units, that is we call it as states, which is again a political entity, right? So if you take India, right, this is one political entity. Within the nation we have states, and every state is political entity again. In political science terminology, this entire nation is a state, and even these are states, even it is a state. Subdivisionals, right? So to avoid these confusions, what we can do is we can simply use the word nation, and it is regional. National governments and regional governments or provincial governments, right? So that is what the difference between nation and state. Now I think you can bring out a difference between nation and state. State denotes a political entity. Nation denotes a geographical entity, right? It is the that is the so the entire what you call a territory of a state, a larger political territory, right? So article, if you take this rule of law, the third element of rule of law, it gives importance to primacy to the rights of individual. That is, the rights of individual is always given primacy. That means power to violate the rights of individuals, right? So even the state, right, importance is given to the rights of individual. To whom this constitution is meant for? Constitution ఎవరి కోసం ఉంది? ఒక్కదాని కోసమా? పీపుల్ కోసమా? అందరి కోసం, రైట్? సో కాన్స్టిట్యూషన్ ఈజ్ మెంట్ ఫర్ ఆల్, రైట్? ఇట్ ఈస్ మెంట్ ఫర్ గుడ్ ఆఫ్ ఆల్, It is meant for good of all. That means primacy, importance is always given to the rights of individual. So no one has the power to abridge the rights of individual. Simply, no one has the power to restrict the rights of individual. Alright. So if you take Indian Constitution, we have Article 32. We have Indian Constitution. In this Indian Constitution, we have Article 32. It is this Article 32 which provides all the safeguards against violation of rights of individuals, right? So which are in the form of constitutional remedies. Which are in the form of constitutional remedies, alright? So these remedies are meant to protect. These remedies are meant to protect rights of individuals. These remedies are meant to protect rights of individuals. So whenever there is arbitrary violation of fundamental rights, or whenever there is a arbitrary restrictions on the rights of individual, then the individual can claim these remedies. That means the rights are guaranteed. The rights are guaranteed. There is a constitutional guarantee. There is a constitutional guarantee given to the rights of individuals. అంటే ఏంటిది? రైట్స్ ఇవ్వడమే కాదు, వాటిని ప్రొటెక్ట్ చేయడము, వాటిని గ్యారంటీ ఇవ్వడము, రైట్? దట్ ఈస్ వాట్ మీన్ బై ప్రైమసీ. సో ఎట్ ఎనీ కాస్ట్ ద రైట్స్ ఆఫ్ ఇండివిజువల్స్ కెనాట్ బి వయలేటెడ్, రైట్? సో there is one point that we should know. Though the rights are given importance, though the primacy is given to the rights of individual, but what in case when there is a misuse of rights? Can you always guarantee that the individuals use these rights in the right direction? Can you give a guarantee to this? No. There is an every chance. There is an every chance where the rights of individuals can also be violated. There is an every chance where the rights of individuals, right? Or sorry, the individuals may misuse their rights. Chance of misusing of rights by individual. Then in that condition, right, how to control them? In case when there is a violation of, in case when there is a misuse of rights, should they be controlled or restricted? Should they be restricted or not? Yes or no? So in case of misuse, they should be restricted. Now who should restrict them? Who should restrict them and how should be restricted? This is another important debate. Who should have the power to restrict them and how this be restricted? Who should restrict them? Amma? Law and order is a ground for restrict. Violation of law and order is a ground for restricting them. The question ఏంటిదంటే దాన్ని ఎవరు రిస్ట్రిక్ట్ చేయాలి? Who should restrict these rights? Right? So normally the power is with the state, that is executive and legislature. Primarily it is the government. It is the executive. And how government restricts? By using the law made by parliament. Supreme Court will come only when there is a misuse of power by government. Supreme Court comes whether the restrictions made by government are reasonable or not, whether the restrictions imposed are what you call, whether they are correct restrictions or wrong restrictions. So here I am using the general language, not the polity language. So in polity we call it as reasonable. Every restriction that is used, every restriction that is imposed on the rights of individuals should be reasonable in nature. So whether they are reasonable or not, who will check it? It is Supreme Court, alright? But normally it is the power lies with the government, and government should act according to law made by parliament. Without a law, whether government can impose restrictions on the rights of individuals? Without a law, whether government can impose restrictions on the rights of individuals? Yes or no? చేయొచ్చా చేయకూడదా? చట్టం లేకుండా రిస్ట్రిక్షన్స్ ఇంపోజ్ చేయొచ్చా? ఒకవేళ చేస్తే ఏమవుద్ది? It is regarded as arbitrary act. If government acts without law, it is arbitrary act. What rule of law says? Every act should be according to law. Now who should make law? It is the legislature. So every act of the government should be according to the law of legislature. It is only then the restrictions will be justified. And then comes, that is, the role of Supreme Court comes only when government goes beyond its limits. Right? But remember, it is the executive which has the power to impose restrictions. But alright, so though there is a primacy given to the rights of individual, in case of misuse of rights by individuals, the restrictions can be imposed. Right? So these are the three elements of rule of law. One is equality before law, second one is absence of arbitrariness, and third one is primacy to the rights of individuals. Whether they are present in Indian Constitution? Yes, equality, it is mentioned in preamble. At the same time, articles 14 to 18 of Constitution, articles 14 to 18 of Indian Constitution, that they promote equality. The intention, the philosophy of these articles from 14 to 18 is to promote equality. Right? So we have the equality being followed, absence of arbitrariness. Articles 19 to articles 22, right? They clearly prohibits arbitrary acts of the state. So articles 19 to articles 22, they say that every act of the state, every restriction imposed by the government, right, should be according to law. By saying that, right, our Constitution clearly prohibited arbitrary acts. Article 32, which gave importance to rights of individuals, that is, primacy is given to the rights of individuals. So now we can say that all these three elements of rule of law, they are clearly present in Indian Constitution and they are backbone of fundamental rights. Am I clear about this? Alright, take to the question on this point. Explain the concept of rule of law. Explain the concept of rule of law. Explain the concept of rule of law and what is the significance of this? And what is the significance of this in Indian Constitution? And what is the significance of this in Indian Constitution? Alright, so this is what for today's class, and before leaving the class, let us rewind what we have discussed today. Alright, so we started our discussion on features of parliamentary system of government. Features of parliamentary system of government. Second, we have discussed about the quasi-federal system of India. Then we have talked about a rigid and flexible constitution. Rigid and flexible constitution. Then we have discussed the concept of rule of law. So these are the topics that we have discussed in today's class. Alright. So I hope you have enjoyed the class. Alright. So mostly I will complete these salient features in tomorrow's class. Alright. So from tomorrow onwards, I will post videos on the terms and concepts. I will post videos on terms and concepts of different subjects. Right. So I will start with economy. The purpose of these terms and concepts is, it is this which help you to understand the basic definitions of each and every term, and once you are good in understanding these definitions, once you are good with these terms, it will be very easy for you to learn any subject. It will be very easy for you to understand and learn every subject, right? So before going to the subjects, what I'll do is, I'll make you familiar with these terms and concepts of different subjects, right? In economy, you have different terms, right? In each chapter, right? So this is what I'm thinking and I will do it. Alright. So, and from May 15th, that is maybe after these elections, right, I will start another session to cover the mains part. Right. So now we are going with the prelims part, that is we are going with the basic subjects like polity. So I will spend another 2 hours of time so that I can even cover the mains part such as internal security, governance, right, the international relations, right. So mostly I will do this from May 15th onwards. That means in total I will take around 6 hours of class a day, alright, so that our target is to complete the syllabus by 6 months, alright. So okay, then for now we will meet in tomorrow's class at 9:30 again.